Hello, it's Jim Hutchins for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for this week. Well, we're in the midst of the 7 days of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. And let me say to you, Chag Sameach, happy Feast of Tabernacles. And wouldn't you know it, that UNESCO and the UN would contaminate the Jewish high holidays with an attempt by vote to say that the Jews have never really been on the Temple Mount and Jerusalem doesn't belong to them. UNESCO's decision that the Temple Mount is not Jewish basically is insanity. Scriptures are clear about it. For example, in 2 Kings chapter 21 and verse 7, God says, "In this temple and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name," Yahweh's name, "I will put my name there forever." In 1 Kings 9:3, Yahweh says, "I have chosen and consecrated this temple, which you have built, and by putting my name there forever, my eyes and my heart will always be there." Ezekiel closes his prophecy in chapter 48 by saying, "And the name of the city from that time on will be Yahweh is there." Yahweh is there. Notwithstanding the presence of the today of a mosque, Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But this has implications not only for Jews but for Christians as well. And there have been many Christians who've taken note of this. For example, Darrell Bach, who's Senior Research Professor of New Testament Studies, Dallas Theological Seminary, said, "This resolution is misguided. It ignores the history of the city. Jerusalem is a city with a shared history. Having a tender place in the hearts to those of many faiths, it does not belong to one faith. And it's important, owes much to both Jews and Christians. The United Nations should appreciate this shared element versus denying it." Dexter Van Zyl, certainly a friend of Israel, wrote for Camera, C-A-M-E-R-A. He said, "I find the UNESCO resolution an assault against Jewish history. I find it deplorable. I see it as an insult against Christianity as well. It's moral and intellectual stupidity of the highest order and shows how far UNESCO in the UN has been captured by the enemies of Israel and Christianity." Laurie Cardozo-Moore, president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, said this: "This resolution is worse than Holocaust denial, as it questions the very existence of the Jewish people. UNESCO has been overtaken by history revisionists and anti-Semites," yes it has, no question, "whose obvious hatred for the Jews is so strong that they refuse to acknowledge the facts that the truth is right in front of them. By refusing to recognize the Jewish people's historic and biblical connection to the Temple Mount, UNESCO has denied the very foundation of the Judeo-Christian faith. This is an insult to millions of Jews and Christians alike and must be blocked." Well, we've not heard the last of this, but we have heard significant input from the New Testament scriptures regarding the temple and Jesus' involvement in it. At the Feast of Tabernacles, incidentally, at Sukkot, in John chapter 7 through chapter 9, there's extensive coverage of his ministry in the temple. Verse 2 of chapter 7, when the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles was near, his brother said to him, there was a dialogue that went on, and he goes up to the temple. He goes to the temple, not Al-Aqsa. Al-Aqsa was not even built until 700 years after Jesus was there. Jesus goes to the temple. Verse 14, not until halfway through the Feast of Tabernacles did Jesus go to the temple courts and he began to teach. The temple courts, not Al-Aqsa, the temple courts. And then he gives this concluding statement of his own identity. At the Feast of Tabernacles at the temple, Jesus said this, verse 58, chapter 8. I tell you the truth, Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. I am. He was identifying himself with the I am of Yahweh. The Father bestowed upon the Son his name, Yahweh. The classic passage for that is Philippians chapter 2, verse 9. God has highly exalted him and given him a name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus is Yahweh. Jesus is Yahweh, to the glory of God. And he said that in the temple steps, notwithstanding the charge of anti-Semitism on the basis of UNESCO. Till next week, O Ki Yavo Shiloh, till Messiah comes, Yivareka Yahweh. Yahweh bless you, bless those you love, bless those who love you.